Hello guys, welcome back to The Manga Man, and I will be reviewing Black Clover chapter 265 based on spoiler review raw translations. So please take any assumptions with a grain of salt. There isn't any One Piece chapter this week, so I will look to do a My Hero Academia update. Plus, I believe Black Clover is on break next week. So without further ado, let's get into this review. So, chapter 265. Pretty much just a cooldown chapter. It focuses primarily on the Heart Kingdom and what happened after that. And it essentially carries on from the end of chapter 264. We find out that it's not just Noella that survived, it's Noella, Leo, Nero, Mimosa, Luck, Charmy. All six of them have survived. And it's thanks to them that the Heart Kingdom has basically not received as much damage. Now, this is an interesting tidbit because a lot of discussion has happened previously on Reddit, some forums, where they talk about the comparisons between this and Fairy Tail, and Fairy Tail being notorious for not really having any real consequences after literally fighting for your life type of battles. And I don't know how to feel about this particular element because it does essentially confirm that. However, this might be one of those things where, yes, the Heart Kingdom was saved, but there were consequences, but not on a major scale. They were minimized because of the efforts of these people. We then get told, or we get shown where we are, and essentially the location of where this chapter is taking place is in one of the mana zones that are heavily fortified with thick mana, where you get natural disasters and all sorts of other stuff, and it's an unexplored region that's essentially on the outskirts of the Heart Kingdom, and this is now the new location of the elf village. And in Eurasia, I think is the pronunciation for it. I'm just going to call it Eurasia because it's easier to say. And essentially, this is where they're now staying. We then get introduced to two elves. Now, the wording of this I'm taking with a grain of salt, but essentially, what Patrice says is these are children between the royal and Licht. So the royal being Teshia and Licht being the elf. Now, because there's two of them, it's interesting because when I originally read this the first time, I thought to myself, okay, maybe the boy was resurrected and the girl was always alive. But this actually was brought up in the actual forum, where we've seen these characters before in chapter 213, and I had to go back and reread this because I missed this. Basically, when the whole thing is happening with Zagred, and he's defeated, and William lets out the tree magic, and all the elves are going back to where they're meant to be going back to, and there's like lights in the sky. We see a panel where people are looking up, and we see these two together looking up, alive at that time. This tells me that the boy isn't the son of Licht, but a descendant of Licht. And what further emphasizes or reinforces this is the next few panels after that. We see that Teshia is on the floor, who looks a lot like Lolo, for whatever reason, the queen of the Heart Kingdom, and she's basically got a wound. And Nero is there. Nero's basically saying, wait, one of the children in the womb is still alive, and she basically patches up the wound and goes to help Lemuel, the Wizard King, in that scenario. And then next thing she knows, she got sealed and she got turned into a bird. That being said, she didn't know about this, which is interesting because it wasn't ever mentioned before, but it was foreshadowed effectively 51 chapters ago, which I really like because we're now getting to see that the author Tabata is actually decent at foreshadowing, because earlier on in the series he did the whole thing with what Yami said about other crew members being on missions or not being bothered to come in, and then we get to see the guy posing as Zerx Lugner, and we get to see Nacht now, the vice captain, after 260 odd chapters. So the foreshadowing was definitely there. So ultimately, the surviving child of Licht and Teshia essentially is their descendant. Now that still means that they're partly royal. And just we assume they're more elf than they are royal. It's just they've got some royal blood in them. Over the generations, it's got more purified towards the elf rather than the royal. They're relatively young. The boy does have a side kind of holder, which possibly mean he has a grimoire. We will have to see how this develops. We haven't been given names or anything like that, but very good development, very good foreshadowing. Something you could have easily missed if you weren't paying attention, and I really like it's been reintroduced. It does eliminate possibilities of being a child, because we now know he's of the Heart Kingdom, Spade Kingdom, sorry, and the whole Asta being the child is now eliminated as well, because he would have to be hundreds of years old. So brilliant. We get told that the reason that they're there and were able to help in the first place is they had an oracle, whose name is confusing because of translations. We'll check that out later. And said the reason why you survived is because you got stronger, and to get stronger in 6 months isn't like an exceptional feat. To which essentially Noella's like, well, it wasn't good enough. Lolo still got taken. She's not gonna stay alive forever. I need to get stronger. You are stronger than me. So it's confirming that the elves are stronger than stage 0 or these stage 0 mages. Please help us get stronger. Everyone's like, yeah, and if we can't get stronger, what's the point? And it's very reminiscent of Asta. So essentially, it shows you that all of these people have been affected by Asta's never say die attitude, which I really like. It's rubbing off on them. So ultimately, he's making them better people by being annoying and persistent and driven. So that being said, right at the end of the chapter, we basically get told that they've got like an elf technique, or like something that the elf tribe specialize in. It's called extreme magic or ultimate magic, depending on the translation you look at. So I'd imagine with something like that there'll be consequences, because the elves have larger stores of mana. So we'll have to wait and see what this turns out to be, but it makes sense for the elves to have something like this, because if you think to games and RPGs, and you play a game, you start off as a mage, you might get like a light healing, and then you get a stronger healing, and then you get a grand healing or resurrection, and you have to go through the stages. So we've seen that Noella's developed these different attacks and abilities as she's been going on, but now she's going to develop kind of advanced magic, which will start lifting her up into the upper echelon of power scales, but also rankings as far as the kingdom is concerned. Now, that's essentially the play-by-play of the chapter. It really ends with them saying it will teach you this magic. But my thoughts on the chapter in itself, what this effectively does for me is it essentially starts building the redemption for the elves. Because if you think about it from a holistic point of view, the elves did all this bad thing in the Clover Kingdom, and basically they just went to a high dense mana area and wanted to live in peace. So there wasn't any redemption, there wasn't any making up for their sins, there wasn't any good deeds there. But now, by them being involved in this particular scenario, one, they can be involved and help take down the big bad if they're attacked directly, and help the invasion of the Spade Kingdom. Two, because they've effectively actively been involved in saving the Heart Kingdom, they've kind of counteracted the bad deed with trying to destroy the Clover Kingdom. So that's kind of counterintuitive there. They took over some bodies for elves, and they made them stronger technically as an output. So that's, even though it's a bad thing, it's still a good thing. And now that they're going to be training the youths, that weren't effectively affected last time round. They're now going to make them stronger so they can do a better job of protecting people, which in the grand scheme of things will be better for the civilians in the Clover Kingdom. So although technically they have done some bad stuff, they're actually doing some good stuff now, which hopefully will build this redemption arc to help them redeem themselves for the deeds they did in the past. So the fact that they're now involved automatically kind of starts building that journey, whether it's a short or long one, for them to become better people, whether it's humankind or elf kind, doesn't matter, and make them more relevant to future arcs in the story. That being said, thank you for getting through this. It is a long video, so without further ado, see you later and see you next time. Peace.